Check this out. How about a silent, very quiet protest by RV dealerships against RV manufacturers? Welcome to hbrv Lifestyle, the podcast. I am the host, the Honey Badger, here to give it to you straight and transparent about the RV business, as well as other things. The show in Hershey, Pennsylvania is about to begin. And what RV manufacturers don't understand is this could be a make or break situation for their fall and winter ordering. And let me put it to you like this. According to the people I've talked to, which are owners and managers and finance managers of dealerships, the manufacturers are not interested in helping the dealerships out, except for a couple. There are a couple of exceptions. Okay, I'm not going to get into all that because this is a generalized statement. So according to these guys, there's kind of a quiet protest. So if you're an RV salesperson that's on the factory side, this is what you're probably going to hear over the next 3 months. Yeah, we'll get back to you. Yeah, you know what? We understand that you guys need some orders. Right now, we have enough inventory to get us through the winter. What's another really good one? Oh, we're going to check on our managers meeting. We're going to get a group of our managers, our inventory people, and we'll get back to you on Friday. We'll get back to you next week. Hey, our managers meeting is until the end of the month, and we're going to get together and look at all the inventory and see where we're at and see if we need to place an order. This is more than likely going to happen during dealer days if Hershey, Pennsylvania does not go gangbusters and allow the dealerships to start moving off their 2024 inventory. And in some cases, their 2023 inventory. This is what you can and just to kind of give you context in this, all right? Because this is where the slippery slope comes from. There's a lot of you that are waiting for interest rates to go down. This is something that is going to hurt the Pennsylvania show. And what you don't realize is this waiting for interest rates to get cut means you're going to pay a higher price. Okay, so I want to get that out of the way before that, because that's one of the factors that's going to affect sales at the Hershey, Pennsylvania show, is interest rates. There's speculation that interest rates are going to go down 4 times. Well, obviously the stock market doesn't think that anymore. But we'll get that's for another episode, another day. The reality is, as interest rates go down, dealerships will raise their profit margins. They have to. Okay? There's no ifs, ands, or buts. So if that's what's stopping you from buying at Hershey, Pennsylvania, if you're on the East Coast, let me make this very clear. Refinance it, buy it at the cheaper price, and refinance it later. Okay? You'll save more money doing it that way than waiting for rates to go down. Okay? Now, of course, if you're not ready, and you're not willing, and you're not able, don't go buy. Now, getting back to this, because this is going to get interesting. So let's look at it from the perspective of a car dealership. A car dealership gets an allocation based on their market, based on what they've sold in the past, based on several factors. It's all analytics. If you go up to a Forest River person, you go up to a Keystone person, Jayco, Alliance, Brinkley, well, maybe not Brinkley because Brinkley's pretty still new, Grand Design, Winnebago, you go to any of them and you say, hey, give me a spreadsheet of every single model that was sold over the last 5 years and what area it's sold in. They can't do it. They can tell you how many registrations came in that area, but they can't break it down model to model in one report. Can you believe that? I mean, the only thing you can go by is Stat Survey, and Stat Survey tells you about the brand. It doesn't tell you about the model. Okay? This is one of the biggest problems that the industry goes through, and it's going to affect sales from the factory level. Okay? Now, let's look at it from this perspective. There's a lot of manufacturers, and I'll use Cherokee as an example. Cherokee mass produces trailers every day. It doesn't matter if the dealer ordered them or not. They're going to mass produce, throw them in a yard, and they're going to tell their sales guys, empty the yard. That's pretty much how they do things. Okay, now that's an oversimplification and some exaggeration involved in that, but that's pretty much how they do business. Okay, while you got a lot of brands like Coachman, brands like Catalina, Freedom Express, etc., that build to order. That means the dealership has to place the order and commit to the order before they'll build the coach. So there's two philosophies in it. Now, dealerships are already stuffed beyond stuffed with inventory. And they've done the manufacturer a solid this year. I've talked to a lot of dealerships, a lot of owners, a lot of sales managers, a lot of finance guys, a lot of GMs. They have bent over backwards to try to help the factories stay open. But there's a certain point in time where the dealers need to start looking out for themselves. So I keep saying this. I've said this now for 2 months. Do not expect there to be an abundance of 2025 inventory. This is going to be done on purpose by dealers so they can evacuate their 2023s and 24s. So they can put pressure on the manufacturer. This is the silent protest. They're going to quietly make the manufacturers make a decision. You want to keep building? Just leave them in the yard. We're not going to take them. We're not going to make you mad. We're not going to make you angry. We're not going to fight with you. The dealers are done fighting. What they're going to more than likely do is go out and buy a bunch of used. I talked to 30 dealers across the United States. A lot of them own multiple locations, and they've all told me, hey man, we're going to carry the bare minimum required by our contracts with the manufacturer, with the brand. That's it. The rest of it, we're going to go get used until they wake up and decide, whoops, if we don't get our stuff together, we're going to start closing some more factories. So normally I would say this is on the president and CEOs of each company, which I can't really put it all on Pete Legal now because Pete has stepped kind of aside mostly. So I put this on Bob Martin, Doug Getter, a bunch of these other guys at that level. Winnebago CEO, Don Clark at Grand Design. This is on them. They need to step up and squash this. And you can't squash it by saying, oh, they're just trying to screw me. Oh, that effing dealer, they're always asking for money. That doesn't solve the problem. The problem has to be solved by throwing money at it without asking for anything in return. You have to get the inventory under control. And this silent protest, this very quiet thing, is going to get quieter and quieter and quieter, where eventually dealers are just going to stop answering the phone. Where a rep and a manager from a factory brand shows up to the dealership, and randomly the owner is going to go out the back door and say, whoops, I got to go to a dinner meeting. Adios. It's not good. You know, guys, this, you know, they talk about like revolutions or rebellions as this fight that's a physical fight. This is not going to be a physical fight. This is going to be so quiet. This is going to be played out without anybody knowing. If I didn't talk about it, you would never know this is happening. That's how quiet the RV dealers are going to keep it. They're not going to come out and say, yep, I'm the one that talked to him. Yep, all 50 of us or 60 of us or 200 of us all went to him and said, hey, you can use our name. No, this is something they've said in confidence to me. This is something that they've said you can talk about, just don't use our names. Okay? But just imagine if a guy like Marcus Lemonis, the CEO of the Walmart of the RV industry, camping world, that he turned off the faucet completely on the manufacturers from taking inventory, and he just instructed his guys, go to the auction and go buy used. If Blue Compass, which is the old RV retailer's second largest RV retailer, if Funtown RV, which is growing massively, if Bishop's RV with Josh the RV nerd, all said, you know what? Let's get together and let's stop ordering. And let's watch everybody flop like a fish. You'd be forced to do something. Now, here's the interesting part. If Hershey, Pennsylvania, the Hershey Show, exceeds expectations, not matches, but exceeds and far exceeds expectations, this is why it's a quiet and silent protest, is because at that point the dealers will go, okay, well, I guess the economy's getting back to some kind of normalcy. So lots of things are working against Hershey, Pennsylvania. The dealers want to get rid of 2024s and 2023s. They really don't want to go in there with 2025s because that's a distraction from the inventory they need to move. Number two, there's all kinds of talks about interest rate cuts everywhere. Everybody's been saying it for a month and a half. Interest rate cuts, interest rate cuts, interest rate cuts, interest rate cuts. So people are just sitting by waiting for September 18th. Oh, we're going to wait. We're going to see if they drop it 2 full percentage points. Oh, they didn't drop it at all. Oh, they only dropped it 1/4 point. I mean, there are people that don't understand how money works and how things like escalate. They don't understand it because there's not a lot of education out there about it. There's not a lot of people that really talk about how money really works. Okay? And number three, it's an election year. So those three things are completely going against Hershey, Pennsylvania, exceeding expectations. Now, here's what's interesting, because the manufacturers have kept lowering the bar. According to the guys I've talked to, they started way up here as their expectation for Hershey, and now the bar has been lowered. And the reason why they lowered the bar is because the week after Hershey, Pennsylvania is dealer days in Elkhart, Indiana. So if they hit that lowered bar, they can say, yeah, we hit our goal. Yeah, you lowered the goal down significantly because you woke up and smelt the coffee. It needs to exceed expectations. And when I mean exceed, it needs to be 30-40% better than the original estimate. Not the new estimate. Not the lowered, like the jobs report. Yeah, that's it. Oh, wait. What? We lowered the jobs report. It's crazy. We've run into an interesting situation in the used market too, because there's the people in general don't understand how the used market works in the RV industry. It's very hard to, because there's not a lot of information out there. I provide as much information as I possibly can because it's ever changing. But it's not as simple as, oh, this is my trade-in value that you get emailed to you from kbb.org on your car. There are so many factors. You're going to see consignment lots start filling up because people want to get out of the rigs, and dealers don't really want to take trade-ins unless they can steal them. especially Grand Design fifth wheels right now. So I was talking to one of my dealer friends. He owns 4 locations. I'm not going to tell you where. That's unfair to him. He was telling me that he's hitting Grand Design fifth wheels at half of wholesale book just to make sure he can send it to auction and get rid of it and either make a little money or break even. He just doesn't want the liability. Like he took in a Solitude 390 RL, okay? And simply, he said, I sent it straight to the auction as soon as I got the title clear and all the paperwork clear. I closed that bad boy up, put a not for sale sign on it, told the guys I don't want the liability of it. It's gonna sit there until it goes to auction. And he made about $1,500 at the auction after auction fees and commissions and stuff. So he made a little money on it. Not much, not as much as he should have, but it's about cash flow at that point. He has simply told me that him and a bunch of dealers that are in his 20 group, if you don't know what 20 group is, it's a bunch of guys that get together that own dealerships and they talk about things. You know, they all give each other advice, what each other are going through. It's kind of like a group therapy session, right? And he said that the guys in his 20 group own multiple locations across the United States and Canada, and they've said the same thing. If it's a Grand Design fifth wheel, they are simply at this point feel that they need to be at half of wholesale book. And what they're doing, which is interesting, is they are getting a networking. These 20 guys are networking with used RV lots that do consignments, and they're like doing for sale by owner type of lots. And they're actually, if the people have to trade in the unit and they can get them out at half a wholesale book, they'll do it. If the people are like jump out of their seat and get pissed off and angry and start, doing all that, they simply send them to the consignment lot that they networked with and said, why don't you sell it to them? Or they tell them, go to Camping World and sell the Solitude or the Momentum to Camping World. Camping World will probably pay a lot more than we will. Now, I don't know how much more Camping World will pay. I don't know if they've become hip to the whole frame failure / frame flex thing. I haven't really talked to anybody at Camping World about it. But I can tell you that this has become a very interesting situation. And when it comes to the used RV market in general, there are a lot of other factors involved. So we talked about the Grand Design effect. How about the toy hauler effect? The toy hauler effect actually is bigger than the Grand Design frame failure, frame flex stuff. And I'm going to tell you why. Because the toys keep growing bigger. So the older toy haulers that don't fit the newfangled side-by-sides are worthless. Okay? Give you a great example. I got a great... So I have a dealer up in Northern California that has 3 really great shaped gearbox toy haulers. I mean, they're in the wrapper. Okay? And they have them on consignment up there because they won't take them in trade. Well, they won't take them in trade because they don't want to get stuck with them because none of the toys fit in them. So a lot of these, what happens is there's a paradox going on where you have a guy who has a Razor Pro R or a Can-Am X3 4-seater that's 75 wide, 77 wide, 80 wide, 13 feet long, 14 feet long, 14 feet 6 inches long. But so they went and spent $60,000 on the toy, but they only want to spend 10 or 15 grand on the toy hauler. You can't fit that toy in a $15,000 toy hauler because of the size. You have to remember a lot of these gearboxes, old Weekend Warriors, Tahoes, Transports, MPGs, all Sandstorms, Sand Sports, all these older toy haulers that were built from 2002 to 2000 and let's call it 13, 14, They were built around a razor that was only 64 inches wide. Okay, so you have to, the toy hauler industry, if you have an older toy hauler, it's worth spit. It doesn't matter what the wholesale book is. It doesn't matter what the retail book is. It doesn't matter if you add up all the options on JD Power. It doesn't matter what you owe. If it simply doesn't fit the toy, you just lost 80% of the market that can buy it. You're down to the guys that have the older toys, maybe have a toy hauler and a couple quads. You're down to a smaller percentage of the used toy hauler market. So you have to price it accordingly. And a lot of those folks that have the older rigs and the older stuff, they're not looking to spend $15,000 on a 20-year-old coach. It's just, so much has to come out of the used market. So much understanding of the used market is understanding trends. Okay? I'll give you an example. If Grand Design fifth wheels were not going through this massive alleged problem with frame failure and frame flex, and the allegations don't come from me, they come from customers who own them. If they didn't have this problem, they'd be worth more. Fact of life. Okay? If Workhorse, it's the same thing about Workhorse. If Workhorse chassis, which is in the old gas motorhomes, if they stayed in business and kept producing RV chassis instead of getting out of the industry after a massive brake caliper recall, they'd be worth more money. If Weekend Warrior, if Mark didn't, God rest his soul, play around with his nose, if you get my drift, Weekend Warrior would still be around building massive toy haulers. And again, their coaches would be worth more. So we have to understand that the trends of it all. You have another really interesting trend going on where parks across the United States and Canada are starting to tighten their guidelines on how old of a unit you can have. Okay? The line is usually between 10 and 15 years old. So if you have a 20-year-old carriage, which are great fifth wheels, well built like a tank, you got an old Alpha with that big basement air, you're limited on who can buy and use it. You're limited to somebody that's going to park it on a property. You're limited to somebody that's willing to go to old campgrounds that have no age restriction. You're restricted to people that dry camp, that pretty much are off-grid, off the cuff type of campers. So it's just having an understanding that you have to take the emotion and the ego out of it. Okay? I understand that people want to get as much as they can for their rigs. That's a great philosophy to have, but that's within reason, right? So if you're going to consign your unit, you can't want an astronomical amount of money for something that you have to price it according to where it's going to sell. Let me put it this way, folks. The used RV market has a ton of buyers in it. Daily, I get inquiries through email, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, etc. Now Twitter, asking me if I can help them find a certain unit at a certain price point. A lot of buyers out there for used motorhomes. Tons of buyers out there for used motorhomes. But they're not going to pay COVID prices. Well, my country coach, where I spent $300,000 on it. It's got to be worth at least $100,000. I know it's 20 years old, but it's got to be worth at least $100,000. Okay, so you list it on your own for $100,000. How many people actually bought it? None. You took it to a dealer to consign it at $100,000. None. But the guy next door with his Fleetwood Bounder diesel pusher that's 6 years newer, that has his for $80,000, sold in 10 days. Rigs don't gain value. What happened during COVID with used RVs is an anomaly that should have never happened. So our economy has grown, supposedly. It's been grown off debt. We have the most credit card debt the country has ever seen. Okay? That's what's propped up the economy to supposedly grow. That's artificial. It's all debt. It's all credit card debt on top of it. It's not even good debt. It's all credit card debt that's propped up our economy. COVID propped up these used RV prices that should have never been that high. Used RVs depreciate. They do not gain value. They lose their market value. The what they should sell for goes down. So until next time,